Okay, I thought I'd give a little bit of a rundown as to how easy it is to get up and running with MillenniumOS, which is an add-on for RepRap firmware that adds a bunch of operations in a way that should feel familiar to 3D printer owners to make it easier to get into subtractive manufacturing quickly. So MillenniumOS is distributed as a zip file. It can be downloaded off GitHub, and the installation process is as simple as uploading it into the RepRap firmware system files directory. You can see here that they're actually extracted into different directories. The zip file is set up to handle this all automatically. You don't need to do anything with this. Once it's installed, the only thing you have to do is add this M98P MOS.g line to the bottom of your config.g file. Your config.g file will look different to this. Don't worry about the contents above this. But this line needs to go at the end of the file. Once you've done that and hit save, what you can do is restart the mainboard, and then if I check in here, CM122, my Wi-Fi started straight away, which is good. There we go, and connected. So here we go, RepRap firmware is starting back up, Duet web controls displaying. I have some spurious driver messages, which is always fun. And now I have a prompt from MillenniumOS. This pops up automatically if you don't have a configuration file already available. It runs a wizard that walks us through a bunch of steps to configure the variables that we need. So I'll hit OK, and it basically says, please configure RepRap firmware first. That's the basics of this message. You need to configure a spindle. So there's a command in RepRap firmware to configure a particular spindle on a particular pin. You'll need to define that. You'll need to run that command in your config.g. You then have the same or similar settings for the touch probe and the tool setter, so you basically need to configure those as probes within RepRap firmware, and the documentation for MillenniumOS will have examples for how to do that. So I will click OK, and now the wizard is started. So first off, we detect any configured spindles and we ask the user if they want to use that spindle. The likelihood is that you're only going to have one spindle configured, so most of the time you won't be hitting no. You can just hit yes on this and we save the spindle ID. We then ask if the user wants to enable a touch probe feature, so obviously if you don't have a touch probe you don't want to enable the feature, but I do have one, so I will. So I hit yes, and it tells me to install, or rather to plug the touch probe into the machine, because we need to activate it manually to detect which probe is the touch probe. So I've plugged the probe into the machine. You can see by the lit up thing there that it's activated, and I'm going to hit OK. And now MillenniumOS is waiting for me to activate the touch probe. So if I just push gently on the tip, you can see there the touch probe was detected with ID 2, so I go OK. I can unplug it now just to avoid damaging it. And now it asks me if I want to enable the tool setter feature. So I hit yes, and then it says make sure the tool setter is connected. Well, it's connected down here. And when ready, press OK, and then manually activate your tool setter until it's detected. So I'm going to activate this by hand and just make sure that you can see the Z probe on the interface there activating. Just checking that it's activating there so I don't break anything. I hit OK. Now it says waiting for tool setter activation, so I'm going to do that now. And it's detected the tool setter with ID 1. So that's probe ID 1 is the tool setter, probe ID 2 is the touch probe. So I hit OK. Now we actually have to move the machine because we're going to jog the spindle nose into the tool setter. So it detects that the machine isn't homed and that I need to home it, and asks the user to confirm that we're going to home. So I hit OK. That homes the machine. Most machines would home faster than this. I'm running it quite slowly to test various different bits and pieces. So that is homed, and now we calibrate the tool setter position and run an initial probe. So what I want to do here, it says to install a small metal dowel most of the way into the spindle, which leaves 1 to 2 millimeters of stick out, or leave the collet installed and tightened. So essentially what we're probing now is the shortest possible tool length that can be installed in the spindle, and what that means is that all offsets for tools will be positive, because if we install a tool in the spindle from here, it will need to go, the spindle will need to move up to reach the same point on the tool where the spindle nose would be. So we hit OK, and then it gives us a jog window, so we can jog the nose of the spindle over the tool setter, and we can actually drop the nose of the spindle down to make this easier. Because it's kind of hard to see from where I am. That looks about right to me. So when I hit OK, it then prompts and tells us where that position is, and just essentially asks the user to confirm that that looks correct. And then we press OK, and that runs a tool probe. So you can see it's running a number of probes here. So this is based on the settings of the tool setter itself as to how many probes it runs and how far it backs off. So that tells us the configuration wizard is complete and the configuration's been saved, and press OK to reboot. So I press OK. It says rebooting, and you can see from here that the connection was disconnected because of a reboot. So it's already reconnected. Changing mode. Let's see if it reconnects. There you go. And now you have a machine running MillenniumOS. So I can home this now. And once that's finished, this is now a usable machine. So you can see now that there's a list of macros down here. So if I wanted to run any of these macros by hand, I could click on the macro here and it will run. So say for example I wanted to probe a workpiece using a touch probe, I would click MOS probe workpiece, and that asks me a bunch of questions and walks me through the probing process. I don't have the tool, the probe installed at the moment, and this is not what I'm aiming to do here, so I'm not going to run through this, but this is essentially how the system works. So I clicked on a probe type there that hasn't been implemented, but essentially that is how to install and get started with the MillenniumOS, and that's the sort of user experience that I'm aiming for, with making it feel like more like a 3D printer, where you sort of have a level of being walked through things before you do them. Anyway, I thought that would be pretty cool to go through and put up a little video of how it works. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Cheers guys.